Welcome, everybody, to the first in the Virginia Offshore Wind Landing Innovation Series. Today's topic is going to be around the Regional Maritime Innovation Vision for Hampton Roads. Before we start, I'd like to pass out some words of thanks to sponsors and partners here. We're operating out of the Virginia Offshore Wind Landing, which is located in downtown Norfolk on the waterfront in Hampton Roads, Virginia. The landing is a collaboration between the 757 Alliance, the Virginia Department of Energy, Old Dominion University's Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and the Open Seas Technology Innovation Hub. Partnering up in this effort, today's series is the Hampton Roads Global Commerce Council. And also we always thank the U.S. Economic Development Administration for their kind funding and their support of these types of activities all around the country. The blue economy, the maritime economy is a very exciting place to be, and we are glad to be part of it. The series itself is planned to do a number of different types of sessions. This session is an informational session, basically with people discussing a maritime innovation vision. We're going to have other sessions which are showcasing either companies we're working with or various projects, which would be of interest to folks. And the third type of session we'll be doing is industry sessions, where we'll get representatives in from different parts of the maritime domain, particularly offshore wind, talking about the issues and challenges they're faced with. The idea being you get them out to a wider group of people, solutions and innovations come, and we make the world a better place. Okay, with that in mind, I am going to pass this over to Nancy Grden. If you put your screen on, Nancy, that would be fantastic.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And Jerry, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm Nancy Grden, and I have two roles. I'm at Old Dominion University. I'm the Associate Vice President for Innovation Entrepreneurship at Old Dominion. And separately, I am actually starting up for the Hampton Roads Maritime Collaborative for Growth and Innovation, a very exciting initiative as part of this event today. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We have certainly a lot to talk about, and I do want to introduce our guest here shortly, Mr. Mitch Horowitz. But before I do, I'd like to say a couple things about literally what's happening in our region as it relates to innovation that relates to this broad definition of maritime, which includes offshore wind, resilience, and a lot of other areas. I think what's interesting in our region is sometimes we forget a key word that is germane to our economic development, and the word is water. It's everywhere. In fact, our location right now, where we're literally looking at it. And it's not just the water, it's the array of assets and opportunities that we have. Some of them are natural, obviously the ocean, the geography, but many are man-made. With the port, obviously the defense and Navy, we have a new offshore wind industry here. We have transatlantic cables coming in, and then we have some assets we often don't think about, which relate to NASA and Wallops Island, JLab, who have some of these capabilities that relate to this broad definition of maritime. And so what we've done in the region is to really form an umbrella organization that looks at this big definition of maritime and how it can advance innovation and economic development for our region and for the Commonwealth. The group has been around a little over a year. It has focused on some of the verticals that are key, working with the port, the Navy, resilience, and offshore wind. But interesting, and cutting across every single one of these is a role for innovation and activity. And that's a lot of what we'll talk about here today. I'm also excited to talk a little bit about Old Dominion. Literally this morning, in a separate event, we had some of the leadership from HRMC, led by Debbie Wynn as a co-chair, retired Admiral David Archizell as a co-chair, and President Brian Hemphill from ODU. We announced the fact that we are releasing the TEConomy study, which we'll talk about in a moment. We also announced the fact that Old Dominion is going to create a maritime initiative to really do two things. One is to create a leadership role for the many activities it already has underway in this broadly defined maritime space. And so, for example, we had a group that literally looked at everything the university does, and I'll use the number 100. That includes the number of degree programs, which include undergraduate degrees, certificates, master's, PhDs, and the many centers that relate to something touching water, whether they relate to resilience, technology, maritime. And so the whole point of putting together the initiative is to really present a front door for accessing these resources, number one. Number two, building on them to create some innovation opportunities that we'll talk about shortly. And number three, to actually identify a national leader to head this initiative up. So we were able to announce a lot of that this morning with our president. And I think this is a very exciting component of what we're doing here in the region. The other thing I would say about ODU is we are a very collaborative organization. We love to work with other partners, with other universities. That's really been our mission. And so I think it's particularly exciting on this call today. I know we have a number of people from outside the region. So again, we're very excited to do that. With that introduction, I would now like to say a few words about Mitch Horowitz and introduce him in a moment. One of the things we did as Hampton Roads Maritime Collaboratives is as we were looking at our strategic plan and thinking about innovation, we really realized that we had done a lot in the region looking at economic development, but really hadn't put a stronger focus on what assets do we have that could be leveraged in that regard. So we engaged TEConomy Partners. They are a national organization that has done work here in the Commonwealth before on economic development and entrepreneurship. They've done work all over the country, particularly in regional economic development. And so we engaged them to really take a look at the assets we have and give us some ideas about how we as a region could leverage these not only for economic development here, but for further partnerships. And so we're very excited to be able to announce the results of the report, some very specific initiatives. And I'll jump over Mitch by saying the good news is about a report. It is not going to sit on some virtual shelf. We are actually in the process of using some of the results that have come out of it. We'll talk more about that later. So with that introduction, I would like to actually now turn it to Mitch Horowitz to give us an overview of the Maritime Innovation Pathway Study. So over to you.
Excellent. There we go. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for your patience. We are all learning to deal with these technology issues. And they only seem to get complicated as we move forward in even more hybrid environments. So as I was saying, what we learned about Hampton Roads and the kind of key storyline, the headlines, the takeaways, is that it has a really unique combination of maritime activities. If you just kind of think about it, having one of the largest Navy installations in terms of shipbuilding and repair, together with a major port, along with now offshore wind energy coming, as well as a real emphasis on coastal resilience, you begin to see a lot of different marketplaces, and not only marketplaces, but key customers. So this is something that really stands out about Hampton Roads. It's a place where maritime and the blue economy is truly being engaged every single day. But what people may not know about is there are quite a bit of existing and planned testing, demonstration, and scale-up innovation solutions. And so when Hampton Roads says it wants to collaborate and partner, there are real assets here for others across the US and across the globe to be a part of their blue economy ecosystem. And on top of that, there's a growing emphasis on applied research that we'll discuss, and ODU is actually now doubling down on that. And so there's real opportunities, but there's also things happening at Langley, at the National Institute of Aerospace, and at other universities in the region, as well as a lot of applied research happening in the companies. So within that marketplace that Hampton Roads serves in terms of the blue economy, in terms of the Navy activities, the port, offshore wind energy, coastal resilience, that's a huge marketplace, 34 billion. And as Boston Sea Ahead Initiative says, this is a world that we're just getting into the innovation. We're just starting to open up this to a broader range of growth opportunities and be where clean tech and food and ag was 10 years ago. And what we learned as we dug deeply into these emerging technology areas, is that, in fact, there's a lot of similar cross-cutting technologies, and Hampton Roads has assets in each of these: autonomous systems, digital transformation, cybersecurity, and advanced manufacturing. So for the region in Hampton Roads to raise its game, to be even a more high-value partner to the rest of the world and to be a global player in the blue economy innovation, we needed to kind of identify ways to address better connections between the customers in these markets, these large customers, with the innovation ecosystem. We also have to think hard about how do we focus in a more systematic way to translate the strengths of these testing and innovation and demonstration facilities to really root and grow companies in the region. And also continue, the Hampton Roads has done a lot over the last decade to build out an angel investment community, to bring in accelerators, to advance broader incubation. And what we need to do is keep working on that, because it's very much a work in progress. And so what we've done is we've identified 4 pathways that we'll discuss in more detail, but that really hopefully create good nexus points for all of you, both in the region and outside the region, to really participate and help propel Hampton Roads to its full potential. So in terms of the markets, for many of you, you'll know this stuff pretty well, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But this $34 billion, it really is a combination of more mature world in terms of defense shipbuilding, sustainment, and unmanned systems. And again, that's both in Hampton Roads, they're both building out ships, particularly a whole range of submarines and other key activities, but it's also about ship repair and maintenance, which is not so much the nuclear fleet. And that has pretty steady growth. And even with the recent Biden budget, I've seen information come out that's going to continue to be an important area. But as well, the Navy has a real focus on defense unmanned autonomous systems. And we'll talk a lot more about that, because it's not simply underwater, it's also surface as well as aerial, and it's the integration. The port in Virginia has really been moving aggressively forward to bring in a whole range of new kinds of technologies in terms of use of robotics, unmanned systems, and cybersecurity. And that's really helped it to move forward. And this is a big, big market across the globe. And again, more mature. And then you have the opportunities in offshore wind energy with Dominion's activities moving forward, and the ability to think not only about where manufacturing can happen, but also where things like preventive maintenance and other kinds of activities, and eventually then the marketplace of coastal resilience. And so when we looked at those efforts, what we began to realize is that there are these 4 really defining cross-cutting technologies that each of these markets is drawing on, from autonomous systems. And as I mentioned, it's not just about underwater, it's including surface and aerial, and it's really the integration of that. And that's important for the Navy. It's going to be important for offshore wind energy and the preventive maintenance activities. It's going to be important on coastal resilience in terms of surveillance and monitoring. And ultimately that then moves into digital transformation, where for the region, the manufacturing activities are being transformed, the port operations are being transformed. And so we can see lots of connections back in then with autonomous systems. And ultimately, if you do anything digital, you have to be concerned about cybersecurity. And this region has deep roots in advanced manufacturing, and the major defense contractors and their subcontractors are deeply into 3D manufacturing and robotics. And this then becomes something that can work across all of the maritime marketplaces. So very exciting set of opportunities that I'm sure all of you are working on as well. So when we looked deeply at the Hampton Roads region, again, the strengths really stand out. And those strengths include that scale and breadth of its operations across the Navy, the port, offshore wind energy, and coastal resilience. The kinds of testing and demonstration and scale-up activities often aren't as branded and marketed, but they include NASA Langley has a test range for autonomous aerial systems. There's ODU, which has a test bed for their offshore wind energy. There's RISE, which is a regional group that is bringing in companies to bring solutions around coastal resilience. And there's new things coming on and being planned as we speak. And so in addition to that, then there's a focus on applied research that we'll go into a little bit more and you'll see in a moment. But there are opportunities to collaborate with key entities from NASA Langley and ODU and NIA, as well as with the defense contractors. And ultimately, we see a growing effort in entrepreneurship development, and you'll see where this region can really stand out today and ultimately needs to go in the future. So on the quantitative scan of kind of publications, a good way to summarize what we're seeing is on the vertical here, we're looking at publications since 2015. The vertical is the share of the US, and the horizontal is the number of publications. And as you might expect, in a place like Hampton Roads, they're really standing out in aerospace engineering. And of course, that may have lots of overlaps into key technology areas related to maritime markets. But you can also see some real specialization in marine engineering, in oceanographies, and fisheries, and so forth, remote sensing. And so technology areas that matter as we think through some of the solutions that we're going to need to advance innovation for maritime. When we went a little deeper, what we saw was it's not yet a place where the innovation is happening through patent activities, but we are starting to see a few companies in the venture capital world, but clearly an area that between these two things, the region needs to continue to grow and mature in. But where it does have quite a bit of emphasis is in companies who are receiving small business innovation research grants that really have applicability to those cross-cutting technologies. And we've named a number of them on the bottom slide, but what we see is an opportunity to build upon that strength and then continue to backfill in, working with others around the country, and hopefully create an environment where there's a very high-functioning ecosystem that's connected with other parts of the US as well as globally. So to give you a better feel for the assets, when you really go talk to these organizations, you can see in autonomous systems, mentioned NASA Langley. There's actually an accelerator that the National Institute of Aerospace called Reactor. There's a whole base of companies that have real importance in this autonomous systems. Huntington Ingalls is not only building out a whole campus around unmanned systems, but actually its key software development center for unmanned underwater is based in Hampton Roads, in addition to having a dedicated focused group now called the Virginia Institute for Spaceflight and Autonomy that is working to really make this autonomous systems world come alive in Hampton Roads. At the same time, the whole state of Virginia has really been advancing cybersecurity, and Hampton Roads is a part of that. So this Coastal Virginia Center for Cyber Innovation is a very key investment that works a lot with a whole range of customers, including the port, where they're working on setting up a whole set of cybersecurity solutions, including a major data center. The VMask is a very unique group that got formed to support the Navy a long time ago, but is now much broader than that in their depth. and they really are outstanding in systems engineering and really thinking through use of digital twins and other kinds of modeling and simulation. And on top of that, has been thinking really hard about cybersecurity, but clearly in digital transformation, you can see VMAS. I mentioned the ports activities, a whole lot of focus in defense contractors to make digital transformation part of their advanced manufacturing, the base of technology, SBIR companies, and what we hope will come through in the very near term. JLabs has proposals out to create a brand new supercomputing center very much focused on real-time data analysis, which would be a fantastic regional asset. And then you can see on the manufacturing as well. So we see quite a bit of capabilities and assets, and hopefully as you think about your own situation, you'll see the ways in which all of a sudden Hampton Roads, when you take that range of entities together with its testing, together with its customers, does create something very unique. But there are gaps and there's weaknesses. There's, as I mentioned, need to continue to raise the game around maritime innovation. And so what we're focusing around is that we understand the big organizations who are operating in Hampton Roads maritime markets are primarily consumers today and integrators of innovation and not the drivers themselves. And so what we need to do is think of them as the voice of the customer, and how do we engage with them around problems that if we could solve would really make a difference in the marketplace. And that requires creating much stronger connections between those anchoring organizations and the technology companies in Hampton Roads, and again, broader across the US. And what we also want to be able to do is think about all of the testing, demonstration, and scale-up facilities in a much more integrated, systematic way, and also bring with it ways in which companies who come to the region can really continue to benefit long-term from a presence in the region. Ultimately, we recognize the venture capital is a national market. We don't expect Hampton Roads to become the center of venture capital financing, but we'd like to see a lot better interfaces, whether it's through accelerators, whether it's through angel investors, within the broader national market and venture capital, and begin to think about filling all the gaps as the region continues to advance in venture capital funding. That in fact, maritime is a distinctive area of focus for Hampton Roads in the venture marketplace. We also recognize, though, the threats, and this is a community that is more and more networked and speaking in a single voice across their business community. And they recognize the imperative about helping to sustain and future defense spending levels and priorities, but that certainly can be a threat in the future. And, you know, there were some lean years in the early 2010s, and so with sequestration. So we need to keep an eye on that. Plus, contracting approaches by the Navy need to incentivize innovation coming into shipbuilding and repair work, for instance. And so you need to keep improving with process improvements and so forth, the ways in which things are done. And we also understand that there are other regions in the country. And so what we hope to have happen is to see Hampton Roads be listed by others as places where this is happening. And then ultimately, these can lead to great partnerships and collaborations. So our 4 recommended pathways, I'm going to go into each of these. But let me start around autonomous systems. So as I mentioned, the focus here is not on an individual platform in autonomous systems, but it's across platforms and really building in the strengths around the integration and the ability to interoperate across various platforms, whether it's underwater, whether it's on the surface, whether it's aerial. And there's some really key capacities in Hampton Roads that, frankly, I don't think the world really knows about, which are these testing and demonstration facilities that we've mentioned, but also is some of the key applied research strengths that are happening at Langley that happens at VMAS, that happens at National Institute of Aerospace, and also in Huntington Ingalls efforts as well. And so here, that organization, Visa, is really taking the lead, and Nancy can fill people in about how that is moving forward, but they get it, and they are really connecting the dots. They're also reaching out to Wallops. There's a lot of other resources available as well in terms of demonstration facilities in Virginia. And of course, with Open Seas, there's a real driver of creating more networking opportunities and identification of ideation opportunities. On the small business innovation world, what we hope to be able to see in Hampton Roads is an ability to use the SBIR program in much more of an open innovation collaboration manner between what might be called SBIR companies to prime partnerships. And this has been done in other places. And what we are recommending, and the region is really stepping up to, is how do we connect to primes? How do we build the wraparound services? This has been done in places like Connecticut very effectively. And what we hope to do with this is build on that SBIR program, not just to win more SBIRs, but to really create an environment that is listening to the voice of the customer, creating solutions, and then being able to get them contracted for and actually move into the market, is also then to build out deeper accelerators and work with others who may have venture development experience, so that the Hampton Roads region can be part of this national network around the blue economy. What we've also learned is that in this world of shipbuilding and sustainment, it's a very, very specific type of advanced manufacturing. So there are lots of other things going on in Virginia to support advanced manufacturing, but it's not as much focused on the world of maritime. And so what we'd love to see is a world where in Hampton Roads, we can connect the operational activities that are happening both by the Navy as well as by the defense contractors with the great research activities that happen all across the Navy, and there's surface warfare centers and other key research arms, and kind of build the bridge to that. And there's an opportunity already with Dahlgren at Dam Neck, but what we're hoping, and the Naval X efforts in terms of the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge, what we're hoping is that we could really raise the game on university industry collaborations, maybe learn a bit from things that have been happening, for instance, in like Dayton, Ohio, where the Wright Brothers Institute, using a partnership intermediary agreement, has really helped position a much more integrated dialogue with the ability to go from concept to actual prototyping, and that brings the various sectors together across the defense world, the university, and industry. And then ultimately, we realize that that all these assets about Hampton Roads often get overlooked. And so we need to create both internally and externally a way to connect the dots, and for people to see a whole community focus on maritime, and both be a home where people can meet peers, can meet other kinds of needs that they have for solution providers, but also can brand the region and can make it really easy to do business with. And so that's being done through a whole variety of organizations where we can really see the efforts that Nancy has been leading with these Hampton Roads Maritime Collaborative, together with Open Seas, together with 757 Collab, which is an entity that started around the angel investments, but is really deepening its services to really stand out and create a home for maritime innovation in the region. And ultimately, what you can see here, this is a graphic presentation of how we see the world working. We're building off of these significant maritime customers in the region. We have assets both in the test beds and resources and the research drivers. We already have some ecosystem players, but what we really want to be thinking about is the full commercialization pipeline from ideation and viability market entry and growth and scalability across these key technology focus areas. And the opportunity here is not to think about each of these maritime markets in isolation, but to think about them across the board. And ultimately, it's going to build out a very rich and deep ecosystem. And many of the entities are already here. It's about connecting the dots, creating better linkages, allowing better insights into market needs, and ultimately creating a place where everyone can see themselves as part of the ecosystem and in essence, have a very, very high functioning maritime innovation cluster. So I'll stop there, Jerry, and I don't know if we'll take questions. And thank you for the opportunity to present to all of you.
Thanks, Mitch. Really, really appreciate your presentation and the work you're doing with us. I'll throw it out to the chat now, whether there are any questions that folks would like to know about, observations, that sort of stuff. Okay. Hey, Mitch, the question is, yeah, in your guys' experience, have you run across another region in another case study, so to speak, not necessarily in maritime, but other areas where this kind of approach was used to really drive economic growth?
Sure. So you're saying, places where they're building off of assets, but now they're moving into innovation. Sure. I mean, one example that I might give that's recent work that we've been doing is in geospatial. So take St. Louis, has long been an operational center of excellence for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So a very significant entity, and has around that a community that helps service that, but now has real demands to raise their game in innovation. And so recognize that to really stand out, they would have to continue to invest in this. And so they've moved forward. For instance, NGA has created the Moonshot Labs now, and that's going to be a unclassified space to do innovative solutions development. They've been building out through a downtown incubator called T-Rex, an innovation community. Cortex is now very focused around geospatial and cybersecurity needs. And so we're seeing now a community being activated that always had this in their community, but really wasn't focused around winning in the innovation world, and now is seeing themselves as part of it. And of course, as all of us know, things like location services, geospatial, I mean, this touches so many different communities. So you can't just do it in isolation. It's always going to be done in collaboration.
And I think you bring up a good point. There's always the thing about the vertical domains, such as maritime and things like that, and those horizontal cross-cutting things, such as cyber or autonomous systems or whatever, that go across all of it. So
right.
A place with strengths in one area can leverage things that they have in the horizontal areas.
That's right.
Nice formula. Okay, with that in mind, just a couple of closeout things here. Again, thanks, Mitch. We really have enjoyed working with you. Looking forward to this partnership going well into the future. Nancy, what more can I say? You've been a real leader in all these areas, and the university is really, and the community is really blessed to have you. The next session we're going to do will be on the 4th of December, and this is 4th of December. Oh, 2nd of December. I just got corrected by my media person. We'll be presenting and launching a project, an innovation project that we pulled in, which is building a process-based tool for the siting of wind turbines, both on and offshore. And the problem we were initially looking to solve was how to mitigate the conflicts between the siting of offshore wind towers and onshore wind towers with military operations. Yeah, I see some questions about partnering. At the end slide, I'll give my contact information. Like both Nancy and Mitch said, this is not a zero-sum game. It's a blue ocean out there. Compared to the land, there's hardly anything known about the seas. So plenty of opportunities, plenty of chances for collaboration, plenty of ways of getting things done. So yeah, get in contact with me and we'll get some stuff going. Figure out what to do next. Like I said, the next session will be the 2nd of December, where we'll be launching the wind site pool, which is something that ought to be pretty interesting for this use. And with that in mind, my contact information is down in the lower left-hand side. This is Virginia's offshore wind landing. If you saw behind me, you would see the lovely Elizabeth River, where I can look up and down river and see shipbuilding and repair going on right across from me. I can look downriver. I see the Port of Virginia, both the Norfolk and the Portsmouth terminals. I'm watching transport ships going up and down, and I see a whole bunch of recreational people. So the water is a good place to be. Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to you joining us next time. Thanks.